Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? Leigh Dickey here. Welcome to a brand new episode of Yo Nostalgia, the show that covers everything you grew up with, from fads and trends, movies, TV, toys, games, you name it, news. If it's part of the everyday fabric and it's part of our everyday lives, I'll cover it right here on Yo Nostalgia. Today, I want to do a little something special. I want to give you guys a review of a screen test, and that screen test is of John Travolta's Audition and screen test from Welcome Back, Kotter from March of 1975. So that is going to be this week's episode. I hope you guys are ready. I hope you guys are pumped, and I hope you guys enjoy. But before we get into the main event, before I give you my review of John Travolta's Welcome Back, Kotter screen test and audition, I want to tell you where you can find Yo Nostalgia. So Yo Nostalgia is a bi-weekly pop culture podcast that covers everything you grew up with. New episodes are released every 2 weeks on Leigh Dickey TV, LeighTDickey.com, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever you get your podcast. Please do comment, like, share, and subscribe. Rate us 5 stars and leave us reviews. If you want to get in touch with me or the show, please do send emails, comments, questions, and anything you'd like covered here on Yo Nostalgia to yonostalgiashow@gmail.com. Follow along on social media at Yo Nostalgia Show. All right, now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, let's get into the main event. Let's get into why you are really here. My review of John Travolta's Welcome Back, Kotter screen test. Alright, so yes, John Travolta's Welcome Back, Kotter screen test. And before we get started, I am going to let you know that I will link the screen test and the audition tape in the description or show notes. So depending on whether or not you're listening to the audio form of this episode or watching along on YouTube or my official website, LeighTDickey.com, then you'll get a sense of what I'm about to review. So I came across John Travolta's screen test and audition just by pure happenstance. I was, starting in the creation of Yo Nostalgia. I was just looking for old school sort of TV, movie, pop culture things, and this was one of those things that came up, and I watched it. I thought it was cool. I still think it's cool, and it's just a great piece of TV. It's a great piece in the TV time capsule, in the pop culture time capsule. And just as a bonus thing, bonus trope, a bonus trait, bonus little trinket, I think that Welcome Back by John Sebastian, having it used as the theme song to the show Welcome Back, Kotter, fantastic. It's one of the greatest TV theme songs ever. Probably of the 70s, if not just ever, like I said. But it was fantastic. And ironically, I used it as one of the selections in this 30-day song challenge that I did on my main Instagram and Twitter feed at Leigh T. Dickey, by the way. But that's enough of sort of the behind-the-scenes stuff and how we got to reviewing the Welcome Back, Kotter audition for John Travolta. Let's just get into the review process. And before we do that, I'm going to tell you one last thing. This was actually after seeing this audition tape the first time I saw it. That's the germ. That was the germ of the idea for Yo Nostalgia. I was like, oh, this is cool. Let's just talk about it. And this was one of the first things I saw. So that is what led to the creation of what is now Yo Nostalgia, your bi-weekly pop culture one-stop shop. So thank you for commenting, coming by, subscribing, and leaving us ratings and reviews, which you can do on your favorite podcast platform and app of choice. Thank you all very, very much. Let's get into the review, shall we? Okay, so the audition starts out, or the tape at least, starts out with, I'm assuming they're on set, John Travolta himself here. It's from March of 1975, is about 21 years old, I want to say. He just celebrated his birthday like a month prior, I think. So he's just 21 years old. He's just legally an adult. And so he walks into what I assume is the classroom set of Welcome Back, Kotter. I think it's Buchanan High is the high school in Welcome Back, Kotter. I think that's the name of the high school. Like, I've never seen a full episode of the show. I know it exists, and it's got one of the greatest theme songs because I've heard it over and over again. And I think Mace, the rapper, actually sampled a bit of it in his 2004 comeback single, Welcome Back. But like, I know of the theme song. I know of this show. I know that this is basically where John Travolta got his career start and how it basically started to take off. But I've never actually seen a full episode of Welcome Back, Kotter, because I've never seen it in syndication. I don't know if it is still syndicated to this day, at least whether or not the syndication is available up here in Canada, because this is where this show comes to you from, as well as my other podcast, Pinfall, the Pro Wrestling Podcast, and the Beats and Speaks Podcast. But getting back to the audition tape, I've never seen a full episode of the show, but Travolta walks in on set, which I'm assuming is the classroom set for Welcome Back, Kotter, and it's just him. There's nobody else there. Like, I'm assuming that it's a producer, or it may even be Gabe Kaplan playing with him off set, or at least leading him through his audition. It may be a director. I don't know. But you guys can judge for yourselves, because the tape will be in the description and or up in the cards in the video if you're watching this episode on YouTube or my official website, LeighTDickey.com. So he walks in, and right away a voice off set goes, "Oh, who are you?" And John Travolta here, like on the show, his character's name is Vinnie Barbarino. In this audition or screen test, the character is Eddie Barberini. So I don't know whether or not they just didn't like the sound of Eddie Barberini, if that was the original way it was written, like if that was the original intention to have Eddie Barberini instead of Vinnie Barbarino. But here in the audition, Travolta is auditioning for the role of Eddie Barberini, who we all know turned into Vinnie Barbarino. And I think we're all happy that the character name was changed and Travolta's career took off. So he's auditioning for the role of Eddie Barberini, who is the leader of the Sweat Hogs, of course, later changed to Vinnie Barbarino by the time the series premiered about 6 months after this audition. I'm not sure whether or not by this point in auditions, whether or not the other roles were filled, because he does mention Epstein, he does mention Horseshack, he does mention Washington, played by Ron Palillo, Ron Hedges, and Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, respectively. So I'm not sure, but they go back and forth, whoever's off screen and Travolta, and you can see Travolta just light up. It's fantastic. And come to think of it, after watching this audition, and I got to thinking, Travolta basically played the same person for maybe 4 or 5 years. And I mean, he was Vinnie Barbarino, even though he was auditioning for Eddie Barberini in this audition. He was, how do I put this? He had a really thick Italian accent, and he hammed it up. I don't want to say he hammed it up, but it was really thick here in the audition. And if you really think about it, so were some of his earlier roles. Of course, you had Tony Manero from Saturday Night Fever. You had Danny Zuko from Grease. They're basically the same, like Vinnie Barbarino or Eddie Barberini. Tony Manero and Danny Zuko are the same person, right? It's just Travolta playing a version of, or a more amped up version of Vinnie Barbarino on the big screen. At least that's what I get out of even watching this audition tape and clips of John Travolta as Vinnie Barbarino on Welcome Back, Kotter. So he walks in, and whoever's auditioning with him or leading him through the audition just goes, "So what's your story? What's your name?" I'm Barbarini, Eddie Barbarini. So that was the first little thing. Oh, it wasn't Vinnie Barbarino from the get-go, I suppose. And obviously they changed it within the 6 months between this audition and the time the show hit the air. So, all right, so who are you? Right? Who do you have with you? And he mentions Horseshack, Washington, and Epstein. Epstein's the animal. Horseshack. He looks back. He looks at the camera and then looks back as to where Horseshack would be sitting, because there's nobody there with Travolta. It's just him and whoever is leading him through it off screen. So we've got Epstein. He's the animal. We've got Horseshack. He does good imitations, right? And he talks when I tell him to talk. And he's got that really thick Italian sort of New Yorkish accent, and he really puts it on. I don't even know if it's put on or if that's just naturally him at that time. But it's fantastic. And, you know, whoever's leading him through it, I suppose the casting director or whoever, just like, all right, well, I got your story. Just sit down, right? And then he delivers that famous line, "Up your nose with a rubber hose," and he delivers it so well. I mean, that's a poor imitation, but it's just up your nose with a rubber hose, and he sits back down, right? Just sits back down on the desk, and he's fine. He's like, "Oh, you're a bit of a rouser. You got any more?" And he just goes into this, "Yeah, I'm the best, you hairy fairy," and it's just sort of everything kind of rhymes after. There's like a rhythmic thing. So like another one would be, "Yeah, off my case, toilet face," and of course it's the 70s. So I mean, those are still funny to this day, but back then that's the stuff that you would hear, and right, so everything just had a rhythm to it, and Travolta delivers them spectacularly. So they go from that, and then apparently, like, the character trope of, you know, who turned out to be Vinnie Barbarino, but in this audition, like I've said several times, Eddie Barbarini, is that he's very protective of his mother, and like, just you don't mention that, right? And I'm assuming, like, I got that because I'm in that same, even though this is a television show audition, it's like, just don't talk about somebody's mother. Don't talk about somebody's family. You just don't do that, right? It's just a respect thing. You don't do that. Like, if you have a problem with somebody, like, I'm not going to drag somebody's family into it. You know what I'm saying? But apparently the character trope of John Travolta's character, Vinnie Barbarino, was that, like, his mother was like this saint, that woman, and he even says it, you know, "Not my mother," right? "Not my mother. That woman is completely holy," right? Okay, whatever. So, because whoever's leading him through the audition off screen says, "Yeah, I saw that your father, he got a job. I saw it in the Wino News." And then he just goes, "What?" And then you just hear, "Yeah, I ran into your mother last night, Barbarini. Everybody did." He just goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Not my mother. No one mentions my mother. That woman is completely holy." And he does this thing with his hands where it just comes out and then, right? I'm trying to mimic it as best I can, but that woman is completely holy, right? And then they go from, like, the classroom scene, "Thanks, whatever," and just goes, "Yo, Barbarini, what are you doing in my apartment?" "Just checking it out." "So this is where you bring your chicks, huh?" And that's Travolta to whoever's off screen. So and then whoever's off screen goes, hey, Barberini, I left your mother out of it. You do me a favor, you leave my wife out of it, right? Which I thought was cool. So Travolta then automatically switches to, oh boy, I'm a bit embarrassed. He's just, oh, I'm embarrassed now. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Kotter. It's nice to meet you. Hey, is this guy giving you any trouble? He's just playing with the guy off screen, who's, I guess, now in the role of Mr. Kotter, who would be Gabe Kaplan, because he's the one that co-created the show along with Alan Sachs. But he's just, Travolta goes, so, is this guy giving you any trouble? She doesn't give me any trouble, Barberini. And then it's just, nah. So he doesn't give you any trouble. He doesn't give me any trouble, Barberini. In fact, she works at an art gallery downtown. You look over there, that's that's her work on the wall. And then Travolta just looks and goes, yeah, that's far out. That's really far out. It's not far out. It's a painting. And Travolta just got, he does the Macaulay Culkin thing, from Home Alone, where he does the whole, whoa, and just sort of, in amazement with his hands on his face. He's just like, it's a painting. I thought it was a photograph. I really did. And she goes, it's a painting supposed to look like a photograph. Well, why don't you just photograph? Right? And it's perfect. And the guy, he dismisses Travolta with just all right, Barberini, I think you should get out of here now. You got anything else you want to say? Yeah. Up your nose with a rubber hose. I'll see you, Mr. Kotter. I'll see you. And he just salutes whoever's off screen and walks off set. And I think that is fantastic. It's a fantastic look into TV history. It's a fantastic look into one of the best sitcoms probably in the last 50 years or so, last 45, 50 years. And it's a cool look into the early career of John Travolta. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Yo Nostalgia. Please do comment, like, share, and subscribe. We're on YouTube under Leigh Dickey TV. My official website, LeighTDickey.com, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever podcasts are available. Please do comment, like, share, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us reviews too. If you would, follow along on social media at Yo Nostalgia Show. Let me know what you thought of this episode and John Travolta's Welcome Back, Kotter audition tape. It will be listed in the show notes and in the cards if you're watching the video. But please do follow along on social media at Yo Nostalgia Show. Send emails, comments, questions, and anything you'd like covered here on Yo Nostalgia to yonostalgiashow@gmail.com. I have been your host, Leigh Dickey. This has been another episode of Yo Nostalgia, and thank you all again for tuning in and listening and or watching. But we will see you all in 2 weeks for another episode of Yo Nostalgia. I am your host, Leigh Dickey, and I am signing off. Peace!